What is going on, guys? Welcome to Greg's TV Daily Rewind, is where we go back a week, give you the past 7 days of tech news videos in one single video. We talked about the Galaxy Z Fold 5, some new information that came out about that. We talked about the Galaxy Z Fold 6, a phone that's not even out, but it's going to get a few features that the Z Fold 5 will not have. We talk about a lot of other stuff as well. We talk about SD cards maybe coming back, or should they come back, to flagship phones here and all over the world, and much, much more. So enjoy this week's video, and we'll see you in the next one. But I did want to talk about the Galaxy Z Flip 5 and the potential of that outside display, because if you remember, the new Galaxy Z Flip 5 is going to have a much bigger outside display. It's going to be 3.14 inches, and that display itself is not looking like it's going to be a perfect square. It looks like it's going to look more like a traditional, what a folder looks like, a physical folder with that kind of indent into the display. Still looks cool, a little different, but it does look cool. And I wanted to talk about the potential of what they could actually do with that look of the display. So when we look at this display overall on the outside, the 3.14 inch cover display, you can use it for turning on and off your quick set toggles and widgets. You can have those on there. You can view your date and time, notifications, things like that. But what about, obviously the other big thing that you could potentially use this for would be selfie photos, which you could already do. You use those back cameras and you can get much better photos than you could on the front camera. I love this. You could always do this, but now it's going to be even bigger. So if you have bad eyesight or you want to see more detail in your photo or video, you now will be able to, because of the much larger display. But what also potentially might happen here is running full screen apps on here. Maybe not everything, but I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll be running Instagram, or we'll be running Twitter, or watching YouTube videos, or whatever it ends up being for whatever app. To use a full screen app on this would be absolutely amazing, because the screen, even though it's not as large as you would think of it in terms of a regular sized phone, it's still enough screen real estate to get information out. So if you're using Twitter, you just want to read a couple of tweets or respond to a direct message directly into Twitter, or to use some kind of messaging app, or to whatever it may be, to get full access to your full phone on the outside of that display would be amazing. And I think that would be a huge selling point for the Galaxy Z Flip 5. You think about the Galaxy Z Fold phones, where you can use this display or you can use the outside display to their full potential. You get the same experience, just in different sizes. So I love the idea of that. Hopefully they end up doing that, but definitely I think the bigger selling point, if they don't do that, would be to see much clearer, better videos and photos through that display, because it is bigger. Story, really slow news day, but I saw this article on Droid Life that said, do you miss the micro SD card? And obviously you can still buy micro SD cards. I don't think they're not meaning do you miss micro SD cards, because you can still buy them. Do you miss micro SD cards inside of phones? Because you can still get them in phones, let's be fair. You can get them in these, the really budget phones still have micro SD card support, but you can't get them in these flagship phones anymore. iPhones never had SD card support at all, ever, ever, ever. Android had them from basically the beginning of time up until about 2020. You could add a micro SD card in there and store your videos, your photos, your music, your games, some apps. You could do stuff like that, and then you could carry that little SD card with you around when you got a new phone, and you'd always have your stuff with you. You really wouldn't have to use cloud storage, because cloud storage really wasn't, they had it, but it wasn't super prevalent. Not everybody used it, 5-6 years ago. And now we're at a point where I can't think of any flagship phone that has micro SD card support in it. I literally can't think of one. And you might think about, well, why did they remove it? And obviously it's a cost-cutting measure. If you have to put one less component into the phone, that's more money in the pockets of the manufacturer that comes out with the phone. Even if the part costs 50 cents or $1 or $5, if you times any of those by 1 million or 10 million or 100 million, however how many phones you're selling that have that, you're saving a lot of money. with it. You're saving a ton of money, millions of dollars, tens of millions potentially. And when you get into those kind of factors and numbers, you're like, okay, that saves jobs, that pays their health insurance for a bunch of people, or pays for the lighting bill, whatever it is with it. And then factor in, if you don't have an SD card in there, then you're gonna potentially have to buy the higher storage option, which again puts more money into the manufacturer's product pocket, I should say, for that product. When you factor all that stuff in, you come up with, it's really about the dollar of why they probably removed it. Now, maybe they removed it also because it hurts with water resistance. You can't get as good water resistance or any water resistance if you have a micro SD card built into your phone. Okay, I can understand that. I'd rather have water resistance than micro SD personally. But take that out of the equation then. Maybe that's not the issue, or they can get around that issue and still have water resistance. It is, for me, admittedly, I do not miss the SD card. I don't want the SD card personally back. I would never use it again. But for a lot of people, and because I looked at that article that Droid Life did, and 86% said they want it back in the phones. And I can see why they'd want it back in a way. As much as I'm not a fan about it, people that don't want to pay for cloud storage to easily have their phones, all of their photos and music, or photos and videos on their phone, they can have it right there for free, or that one-time cost of the micro SD card, instead of putting it in the cloud. Now, if you lost your phone or the micro SD card died, then okay, your photos are gone. But maybe they don't care about that, and they trust themselves enough with the phone, and they trust the SD card, and they don't want to pay that yearly, monthly fee, whatever they're incurring with cloud storage. Maybe the people don't want to pay for the extra amount that they have to pay to get the extra storage on a phone. I understand that as well. Makes total sense. At this point in time, I can only imagine that if a flagship phone from Samsung or Google or OnePlus or Oppo or whoever it may be came out with a phone with micro SD card support that was a flagship phone in there, it would be a huge seller for, especially with the nerds and the geeks. That would probably be a phone they would clamor to. If Samsung came back out with it, it would be, I honestly think it would be pretty big. I don't think like everyone's mom and dad would be like, oh, I'm getting that phone now because it has expandable storage. I don't think that would happen, but I think like the nerdy people like myself, people like, I wouldn't personally go for it, but people like me, I guess you could say, would go for that phone because it has expandable micro SD card storage. Our first story of the day is a successor of sorts and a competitor to the Galaxy Z Fold 4 and 5 phone that will be coming out soon, and it is the Vivo X Fold 2 phone. Now, I had the original Vivo X Fold, and it had, I admit, it probably had better hardware than the Samsung phone, but the software just wasn't up to snuff versus what Samsung puts out. And you can see Vivo X Fold 2 foldable smartphone launch timeline teased could launch in April. It is said to feature the most powerful foldable display made by Vivo to date. Vivo has started teasing the arrival of the second generation foldable smartphone. The device will be called the Vivo X Fold 2 and might arrive in April in China. It will be powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor as per reports. And when we take a look at some of the key specs on here, again, you'll see that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, 12 gigs of RAM, 8-inch display. I want that, guys, so bad. 360 ppi AMOLED display, 120 hertz, 50 megapixel camera up there, LED flash, 32 megapixel front camera, much more than what Samsung gives you, 4800 milliamp battery, fast charging, USB-C port, 256 gigs of storage, Gorilla Glass wireless charging, fingerprint sensor, all of that stuff that you would want. Now, this looks like it's probably only going to be released in China, unfortunately, but again, spec for spec for spec for spec, it's looking like it's probably going to be better than Samsung's offering in a bunch of ways. But again, I still feel like software will play the major key here, and Samsung will probably still outshine it in that area. Next up are some Geekbench scores for the Galaxy Z Flip 5 and Galaxy Z Fold 5. Now, those phones will not be out until August, most likely, of this year. So when we show these, this is pretty crazy that it's already out. I mean, it's not so crazy because we know what processor it's going to have, Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. But the scores are out. So here we go, guys. Here they are side by side. And actually, the Z Flip 5 is outperforming the Z Fold 5, you can see 2030 for the Flip 5 and 2014 on the Fold 5 for those single core scores. On the multi-core scores, we've got 5213 on the Flip 5 and 5022 on the Fold 5. One thing to know is the Flip still only has 8 gigs of RAM. The Fold will have 12 gigabytes of RAM. So that's an even more impressive feat that it actually performs better in multi and single core score versus a phone that has more RAM on it as well. So really, really great performance coming to these phones. So if you're wanting and remember, the S23 Ultra has that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 and gets really good battery life and really good performance. And that should also come to this Flip 5 and the Fold 5 as well. And we got some good stories here, guys. The first one is all about the S24 Ultra, and there's a couple of upgrades coming to this phone that I think are gonna make people pretty happy, especially when you think of something premium and you want some kind of change. There's a couple of changes coming to this phone that are somewhat big. So let's talk about them. So the information came out of a website called Sam Lover. I've never personally heard about this site, but I found the article on Reddit, and then because they linked to it. Ultimately, it says Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra to offer a 144 hertz refresh rate. And if you know about what we have the last few years, it's 120 hertz refresh rate. So a bit of a bump in the refresh rate, so things should look a little bit smoother and responsiveness should be that much more improved. Again, just a tad more so than anything, but they have a little addition onto there as well that says some things that we should expect, and I agree with these. Android 14/One UI 6, that's probably a given. Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor, again, a given because we're on the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. UFS 4.1 storage, which would be the fastest storage on phones at that available time. 200 megapixel image sensor, but with some improvements. So the same image sensor, but again, with some improvements, probably more so some AI stuff that they added into there. Better zooming capabilities than the previous device, which would be, I don't know, I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't add that, but I also would be shocked. I think they should. We're at 100x, go to 150 or something like that. Plenty of new features, including satellite connectivity. I do think they'll add that satellite connectivity in next year's phone, especially with iPhone having, at that point, a 2-year lead. But we're not done, guys, with the S24 Ultra, because there's some more information come out about that is saying that it's looking like the RAM is going to be increased. According to multiple sources, the RAM increase for Galaxy flagship is likely to start with next year's devices. Now, what do you think about that when you think of increased RAM? Well, you think about the S23 Ultra, and for a while having 12 gigs of RAM. At one point there was 16 gig RAM versions that you could kind of easily find on there. So I expect with S24 Ultra, probably 16 gigs of RAM in that phone. And then the base versions, you're probably looking at 12 gigs of RAM in those base versions of the device. And then I don't think we're gonna see like 20 or 24 for a while. Maybe, but I just don't think you'll see that for a fair bit of time on there. But some nice upgrades coming to the S24 Ultra, seemingly through these leaks or rumors so far. Next up is all about the big camera update coming to the S23 line of devices. We've been talking about this one for about a week or two, and it is already starting to roll out. It has rolled out in South Korea. It's a fairly big update at almost about 900, over 900 megs on there. It's in Korean, so I had to use my Google Translate function to figure out what it said, but basically it says camera super steady function. Image quality has been improved and shooting instructions have been added for the super steady function, which allows stable video recording in dynamic situations such as running. Stabilization code, which application stabilization code related to the terminal operation is applying Google security update. And you know, it doesn't go a lot into what specific camera features it went into except for super steady mode. But it being a 900 plus meg update is definitely more than just a couple of security fixes and super steady motion. It's got to be more camera features in there. So we're gonna have to wait, and maybe I'll find out later today and then tell you tomorrow, and I'll tell you today, or there should be some more information about that. But expect this update to start rolling out from basically today up until 7 days all throughout the world. I don't think we'll have to wait that long to see this update rolling out to more parts of the world. First story is about the Oppo Find N3. I've reviewed this phone, the Oppo Find N2, and it's a really cool, cute, foldable phone. It's a different, slightly different form factor than the Galaxy Z Fold 4. It's like smaller, but fatter at the same time. So it's kind of an interesting device. What about the N3, the successor to this phone? The Oppo Find N2 has a main display that is 7.1 inches, but on the N3, they're going to go all the way up to 8 inches. So they're basically making this a huge phone, which actually I'm more excited about. 120 hertz display, the resolution will be 2268 by 2440 on that main display. So a true 2K plus device resolution. 50 megapixel IMX890 main sensor, 48 megapixel ultra wide, a periscope camera. It will have a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, 4805 milliamp battery. It's going to be ultra thin as well. This is going to be sounds like a killer device. I really want Samsung to go up to that 8 inches. That's one of the things I loved about the Vivo X Fold, is like that phone has a huge inside display, and it was very consumable. When you closed it, it felt like really like a regular closed phone. I like this implementation of the N2 better than the Z Fold 4's skinny long display, but Vivo X Fold had like the perfect size. It was like, man, it was tall. It was great. It felt like a regular phone, and then it felt like a huge tablet when you opened it up. And it looks like Oppo Find N3 is doing the same exact thing. Yesterday, we spoke about the big camera update coming to the Galaxy S23 series of phone, and we didn't have a lot of details, and it looks like the details have been broken out. I told you we'd probably hear about it, yesterday or today. So I'm telling you guys today, and it's a lot of stuff. So let's just dive into it. These tweets come from Anthony the Galax, and he's gathered all this information in a nice, neat format for us. So S23 series March update, that big update we're talking about, adds features to improve gallery usability. So the gallery app. Autofocus concept has been changed for faster photography. So now you can capture your photos faster, but still get your autofocus. Improved the camera function and image quality. You love seeing that. You always want to see better quality photos, and it looks like they're saying they've done that. You can immediately delete photos that are being processed immediately after taking them with the camera. If you remember, sometimes you take a photo and it has to process it. While it's doing that, you can actually delete it, is what it's saying. Improved sharpness, flicker, and added notice when shooting ultra wide in low light indoors after setting camera video mode to super steady on. Fixed a phenomenon where a green line was displayed on the left side intermittently when shooting in the rear photo mode. Improved image stabilization when shooting with 1080p 60 after setting auto FPS off in rear video. Improved the line shape banding noise in the sky mid-low light when shooting high pixel and low mid-light. Optimized overall sharpness for high pixel shooting and improved intermittent blurring through OIS stabilization. It fixed a malfunction when shooting after night off in low light after selecting shooting speed, high resolution, speed priority, and camera assistant. Camera assistant also got an update with shooting speed, high resolution, and all of that. It also fixed an issue where face recognition could not be recognized intermittently after ending a third-party video call. Stability has been improved for camera improvements introduced through other routes as well. So you can see that is a major, major camera update, and I will be very curious to try this one out. Our first and only story of the day has to do with not the Galaxy Z Fold 5, but the Galaxy Z Fold 6. These are rumors and quote-unquote leaks that are coming out for the next generation of the foldable phone. The Fold 5, for instance, should be out in August of 2023. Fold 6 should be out in August of 2024, so over a year away from now. But there's some features that are coming out to the Fold 6 it looks like that the Fold 5 will not have. Now, this information is coming out from RG Cloud, who is saying that Samsung maybe just learned from Huawei their next Fold 6 will have dust resistance and 5-star impact resistance when unfolded. A much better cooling system. Unfortunately, no breakthrough on battery like other brands. I want to talk about that before we dive into some more information about the Fold 6 that he goes on to say. So he does mention that dust resistant. So it looks like the Fold 6 will have that IP68 dust and water resistance, something that's very common to a candy bar phone like the S23 Ultra phone. It would have something similar to that, so you don't have to worry about dust and water on there. The other piece he does say also is that 5-star impact resistance when unfolded, meaning that when it's unfolded like this and it hits something, that the resistance of it breaking is a lot more increased, where it won't break. So that's a great thing to have. So they should be more sturdy when the Fold 6 launches. Also, to go upon that, much better cooling system. I don't have any cooling heating issues with my Fold 4, but can anything and everything always be improved? Of course. So to give me a better cooling system within my phone to help with performance in general, especially when it's performing at a very high range for over extended period of time, is great to see with that. The other piece of that would be the battery, saying that the battery doesn't seem to have changed at all, at least the technology in it. Doesn't mean the battery won't get bigger slightly, but it means like the technology behind the battery will be very similar to what we get with the Fold 4 and 5 and all the other folds that we've gotten before it. The other text he put out was a response to a question. So Muhammad asked him a question, or Mohammed said, can it be assumed the dimensions will be the same as its predecessor? And he says, yes, similar. The image reference was wider just to give better looks of what inside and internal presentation. Actual product will be slim as a Galaxy S phone, although it doesn't disclose the possibility of Samsung moving to a wider screen. So it doesn't mean that we're not going to get something bigger when the Fold 6 launches, or that the dimensions won't change. As of right now, it doesn't seem so. He did say it'll be as thin though as a Galaxy, for instance, S23 Ultra, which is very interesting because that's pretty thin. Imagine having that as a folding device. I don't know if he means when it's completely closed up or when it's flat, because when it's flat, it's about the same overall. But very interesting stuff about the Galaxy Z Fold 6 thus far. Some things, like water and dust resistance, it's great to have it. It's not mind-blowing for me. I would like to see some new updated battery technology in there to really push that battery to its limits. I would like to see a bigger, wider display for sure on the inside and the out of the Fold phones. But the story of the day is a little bit of a rehash from some information that we heard from a while back. And this is a feature that we have not had in a Galaxy S phone since the S21 Ultra. So you gotta remember, we've been at the S22 Ultra, S23 Ultra, and now it'll end up being 3 years later, this feature comes back, and it's pretty ridiculous that it's going to take this long to get this. And I thought I'd talk about it again just because it's written a little bit more clearly. And I don't know if this is a rumor or thought or whatever, but I know it is a rumor in general, but let's talk about it. So here's the tweet right here, and it's coming from Toran Vats, and he's saying that the S24 series RAM and storage, S24 and 24 Plus RAM will be upgraded from 8 gigs of RAM to 12 gigs of RAM, and the base storage models will be set to 256 gigs of storage capacity, which are all great. And then the S24 Ultra RAM should reach up to 16 gigabytes in RAM. Now, do I think every version of the S24 Ultra will reach 16 gigs of RAM? I don't think so. I think we'll probably still have like a 12 gig model, and then they'll have like a 16 gig model. I think that's what we'll probably see, especially seeing that like the base version of the S23 Ultra still only has 8 gigs of RAM. I think the base model on the S24 Ultra will have 8 gigs of RAM, but then like maybe the middle and the higher tiers will have that 16 gigs, or maybe only the highest tier will have 16 gigs of RAM. It is nice to see on the 24 and the 24 Plus, you still will get, well, you'll actually not still get, you'll get 12 gigabytes of RAM, which brings it up into those premium type feeling tiers and give you the best performance that you can get, or almost the best performance you can get with those phones. So it makes it, again, I feel a little bit better. I think it's a good thing that they're going back in a way to features and specs that they had on these previous generations of phones, and they're making them feel, premium again. It's just ridiculous and weird that it took this long to actually get there again. 3 years to make these phones feel premium instead of just like, we're kind of run of the mill in terms of what the specs they have. The phones themselves do not feel cheap or mid-tier. Like when you use it, it does still feel like a premium phone. What I'm talking about is just the specs alone. Some of the specs in there to throw in there, such as the RAM and the storage amounts, even though you're getting the premium edition, sometimes they're kind of low. You get 128 gigs of storage with 8 gigs of RAM, or 256 gigs of storage with 8 gigs of RAM. It's nice that they're kind of upping everything with the 15th anniversary of the Galaxy S line of phone. Your question of the day is, what is the best phone Samsung has ever released and blown you away with. Let me know in the comments down below what phone that was. For me, it'd probably be like the Note 2 or the Galaxy Z Fold 2. Those would be the two phones that really blew me away. Let me know what your thoughts in the comments down below. Without further ado, let's jump into our Q&A. First question is coming from Reaction saying, 2 questions. Thank you for answering my other one. Do you think Samsung will finally be able to call the Fold a flagship? By this, I mean have ultra specs like S Pen camera dust resistance. Personally, I still think 3 more generations this year, no crease and folds flat and permanent in battery life. Next year, dust resistance and integrated S Pen. The year after that, same cameras as the Ultra, but the Ultra will drop down to only 4 lenses and you'll have 1 in 10 zoom. Other than following year, big upgrade. Last question, have you heard anything more about graphene or solid state batteries? So to answer your last question first, the batteries, I haven't heard anything recently about them switching technologies in terms of that recently that I can remember. The other part of it, when do I think we'll see a real true Ultra version of the Galaxy Z Fold line? I would guess it's probably not gonna be this coming year. I would guess it's probably gonna be the year after, if that. And the reason I think that is because I think more phones that are gonna come out are going to be premium type phones, and they're gonna have to do that to compete with these other foldable phones, such as the ones from Pixel, OnePlus, and those kind of companies, because I think those companies are gonna be cheaper than what Samsung has, so it's gonna put pressure on Samsung to release a better flagship phone. So I would guess 2 years from now. And our last question comes from Scott. It says, I got a question for you, a little unrelated to the topic. My wife has an S22 Ultra. She loves to make small videos but can never send them to anyone, but yet her son-in-law has a Pixel 7, can send her videos from his phone. Why is this? I only ask because if this is the case, my wife will switch to a Pixel and I'll have to switch from a Fold to a Pixel Fold. I'll be honest, it's not enough detail what you're trying to say. So like, which app is she trying to send it from? If it's from her text messaging app, does she have RCS set up? If so, then make sure it's turned on. Some other ways you can send videos and still have them, you can have them send. You can send them from like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or some kind of outside messaging service. You could do it that way. Or you could also send people a link from your Google Photos and share it that way. Like go into the photo or video and you can create a link, like hit share, and then you can hit create link, and then copy that link and paste that link into a message to somebody, and that way they could see the video or the photo. So there's multiple ways to send it, and I hope that kind of makes sense with what I'm saying, but there's absolutely no reason your wife or you should not be able to send a high quality video. There's multiple ways to do it. And if you're just trying to send it direct, a great program that I always use that works on literally Windows, Mac, iPhones, iPads, Android, everything, is called Send Anywhere. It's a free app, and all you do is share the number that you have on that when you're sending the files to them, and the person gets the exact copy of that videos or pictures. Thanks so much, guys. That is all the questions I had today. If you have a question, leave it in the comments down below with the hashtag question, and we'll see you down the road. Peace.